Ladies and gentlemen, welcome here at KBC. Together with SERA, we're proud partners of the Belgian Raiffeisen Foundation. Together we combine expertise in finance, insurance, cooperative companies and the South. Welcome to the BRS Microfinance Lunch Break. For the second time since I became CEO at SERA, I have the honor to introduce the topic and the speakers of the day. Even more so, I'm very happy to witness the number of people that showed up today here in Brussels. Not easily accessible, unfortunately. I think we have around 200 people here in the room. We have around 100 people who are joining us online, of which one group of students of a class agroeconomics at the university in Ghent, who are all together in an auditorium following this session live as we speak. So welcome also to those people. Together we gathered to discuss a topic of utmost importance, the urgent need to accelerate the sustainable transition in Africa and the role of cooperatives in this endeavor. 2025 has been earmarked by the United Nations as the International Year of Cooperatives, under the motto, Co-ops build a better world. This initiative recognizes and celebrates the essential role of cooperatives in the sustainable development. Cooperatives contribute a significant amount of value to poverty reduction, to economic resilience, and to inclusive growth around the world. Let me share some figures with you. There are 3 million cooperatives globally, creating employment for up to 280 million people. And 1 in 8 inhabitants in the world is a member of a cooperative. Cooperatives are a unique business model that combines social and economic objectives. And at their core, cooperatives place people at the center. They enable us to achieve together what we cannot accomplish alone. This model is prevalent in various economic sectors, including agriculture, energy, trade, and obviously also financial services. SERA stands for the C in KBC. Our own background is deeply rooted in the Raiffeisen principles. During a significant poverty crisis in rural areas in Germany in the 19th century, Raiffeisen mobilized communities to develop their expertise, pool their resources, and to decide how to invest them locally. This principle was adopted here in Belgium by a pastor by the name Mellarts, who introduced the Raiffeisen principles into the farmer guilds 133 years ago, leading to the creation of SERA. And the Ra in SERA, in Rabobank, and the R in DGRV in Germany are all testaments to the enduring legacy of Raiffeisen. We are proud to be a cooperative. SERA is a cooperative thanks to the dedication of many generations, and it is our responsibility to pass this legacy on to the next generations. And this long-term thinking and care for future generations is what makes cooperatives frontrunners in sustainable development. However, each generation faces its own challenges, and we must find creative solutions. The cooperative principles remain the same, but its implementation requires adaptation to the current circumstances. And this brings me to today's topic. The Microfinance Lunch Break is an initiative of our organization, BRS. We provide training and advice to microfinance institutions across the world. And in particular, we like to support cooperative microfinance institutions. And we rely on the expertise of colleagues of KBC and SERA, who share their knowledge with their counterparts in the Global South. We supported the initiative Co-op Star, which focuses on empowering research and mobilizing the cooperative movement in Africa. And I'm honored to introduce our speakers, Patrick Develtere and Joseph Njuguna, who will share their first insights from ongoing research and exchange in 20 African countries. Together with a team of 18 researchers, they are finalizing their investigation into the current state of the African cooperative scene. Patrick Develtere is a professor international cooperation at the University of Leuven, and together with Frederick Wanyama of the Maseno University in Kenya, he conducted the first Africa-wide research project on cooperatives in Africa. Their 2008 book, The Cooperating Out of Poverty, The Renaissance of the African Cooperative Movement, was published by the International Labour Office and the World Bank Institute. Joseph Njuguna is the Director Policy at the International Cooperative Alliance Global Office here in Brussels. He leads ICA's advocacy efforts, fostering strategic relations with the United Nations bodies, with governments, and with international organizations to advance the cooperative movement and to create an environment where cooperatives can thrive. I look very much forward to the insights of Patrick and Joseph, and that they will share with us in a moment. I want to thank all of you for being here with us. I hope this lunch break will inspire many of us, and we will continue to support the cooperative movement, and in such a way to contribute to the sustainable development of Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Frederick. Good day, everybody. It's very nice to see a full house and to hear that so many other people are also following this session from behind their screen. So happy to be with you for just 1 hour, trying to start a discussion together with you about the role that cooperatives can play and do play in Africa to bring us to a more brighter future, a more sustainable future. I think it's no surprise that this year of the International Year of Cooperatives is dedicated to the sustainability issue. I think we all feel it on a daily basis, at an individual level, in our families, in our neighborhoods, at the workplace, in our cities, in our countries, in our continents. And if there is one continent that is really facing the problem of sustainability, or rather the problem of unsustainability, it is Africa. Africa is facing a disproportionate burden of climate change and environmental degradation that we have in this world currently. Do you know that Africa, for example, is facing almost twice the temperature change that we are facing here? So there is drought in Africa, there are uncertainties for farmers, people on a daily basis are suffering from the unsustainability of their environment. Now, this is why we started this project of CoopStar. And we started the project of CoopStar, and CoopStar stands for Cooperatives for Sustainable Transformation in Africa. We started it during the COVID crisis. We were all locked at home, and we, together with some other friends, we say, what is happening next? What will happen after the COVID crisis? Will we face another crisis? How will we deal with it? How will the cooperative members in Europe, Africa, North America, any place in the world, deal with it? So we started to connect and we started to discuss what could we do to have a cooperative movement all over the place, and particularly in Africa, that will help us face whatever sustainability problem that we have in the near future. So the people that came together came from different walks of life. We had people from the cooperative movement itself, but we also had people from universities, from think tanks. We also had people from supporting agencies, just like the International Labour Organization or the International Cooperative Alliance, to see what we could do and how we could foster a cooperative movement that is ready for the sustainability challenges that we're all facing. And I leave it to Joseph, my counterpart today, to tell us maybe a little bit more of who are we talking about? Who are those cooperatives?
Indeed. Thank you, Patrick. And I think I will not even need a lot of introduction on what are cooperatives. Maybe you can give me a clicker. Thank you. because I think the first speaker has already introduced what a cooperative is, so I will not dwell into too much of it, and I think most of you are also familiar with what a cooperative is. And the reason as to why we are discussing this, in its definition, if you look at what is the definition of a cooperative, being an autonomous association of people voluntarily coming together to meet their needs and aspirations, it gives you an idea of whatever is happening, especially currently, where development agencies and development aid is going down. Now is the moment for people to come together and discuss what do we need to do, what are our needs. And so those who are not familiar with the concept of cooperatives, this is the concept. People coming together, having common needs, having common aspirations, and saying we want to be our own we govern our own organization to see how it can meet the needs. As the first speaker said, we have more than 3 million cooperatives. So this is not a marginalized concept. So if you're not familiar with it, that is why also the UN dedicated this year as the International Year of Cooperatives, because they also recognize the value and the contribution that cooperatives are making, especially in the developing economy. So in terms of what we are discussing today on sustainability transformation, cooperatives are really contributing, be it in climate change, be it on issues to do with social development, poverty alleviation, eradication of hunger. That is why, for the second time, the UN recognized that indeed we need to elevate this kind of a model to see whether maybe even other countries that have not yet adopted this model can be able to adopt it. It was also said 10% of the employed population, they are employed by cooperatives. 1.2 billion people belong to a cooperative. So it is not something small to say, okay, maybe it's something that we can discard. It's a real phenomenon that we think if it is used for its purpose and it is able to serve its purpose, then it can be able to bring the transformation that you are looking for. And
Thank you, Joseph. So now we know what a cooperative is, what we are talking about, but we have to see that cooperatives have been developing in different parts of the world and have been developing in a different way. So before we can really zoom in into what is happening in Africa, we have to know that there are different models of cooperative organization. The one that is better known in the Anglophone world is the first one that you see here. It's what is called the unified model. So in a village, you would have people coming together to set up their own savings and credit cooperative. In the same village, you would have people coming together and set up their agriculture cooperative, other ones their consumer cooperative. And those different cooperatives would come together and set up federations. And those federations would come together and set up an umbrella body at the national level. So you would have a kind of a unified cooperative model. This is not the case, or not so much the case, in what you could call the Latin tradition, that you can find in Spain, that you can find in France, and in many other places also in Africa. Take Senegal, take Togo, take Benin, different places, where you would have what you can call a social economy model. So people would have a certain problem, a certain challenge, and come together and set up an association. In other cases, they would set up a mutual society. In still other cases, they will set up a foundation. In Africa, very often, people will set up what they call a community-based organization, a very informal organization of people coming together and trying to solve a current problem that they have. In yet other places, very, very common, by the way, also in Africa, is people would set up what is called a ROSCA, a rotating savings and credit association. People working, for example, in the same workplace or belonging to the same parish or neighborhood would come together and bring in some money in a kind of a pot and then distribute it to those who need it. So it's a rotating system. So this is a social economy model because those different associations, mutuals, foundations would be very much interconnected. And the cooperatives are just one single kind of organization that people would look for. In yet another tradition, and a lot of you are Belgians, and you would immediately understand me, is what we could call a social movement model. You also find it in different places in Africa, where in fact it is the farmers' organization or the workers' organization, or a women's organization, or a youth organization that would set up its cooperatives for its members. And that's why we call it a social movement organization, because the primary entity that is bringing together the people is the farmers' organization, is the trade union, it's another organization that is creating its cooperatives to service its population. So those different models you have all over the place in the world, but particularly in Africa. In the Anglophone countries, the unified model. In the more Francophone countries, the social economy model. And then all over the place also you will find the social movement model. Now, as Frederick has already hinted at, this is not the first time that we are looking at the state of play of the cooperative movement in Africa. We did a similar exercise in 2006, 2008, in 11 countries. Now, for those who have a good memory, 2005, 6, 7, 8 were the times of financial crisis. It was also the time of liberalization. And a lot of people then were convinced that the cooperatives that you had all over the place in Africa would not survive that crisis. There was a general sentiment that this fear, the time for cooperatives was over and out. When we went down in 11 countries to look at what is happening in the field, we saw a vibrant cooperative movement still. So they were still there. Some of them went bankrupt indeed. Some of them were dormant, but other ones were very vivid, very vital, and survived this trend of liberalization. So we find all over the place still those cooperatives. We even found the cooperatives as one of the civil society models that was mostly developed in Africa. About 7% of the population in those countries that we had under review at that time were a member of one or more cooperatives. They were a member of a rotating association of credit and savings. They were a member of an agriculture cooperative, of a consumer cooperative, you name it. So that was very impressive. Some of them were very small, but we even discovered some of them that were extremely big. The difference with the previous phase was that they were less supported by their governments, because their governments thought that everything should be market-oriented and that they should intervene less than before. Those cooperatives were also much less dependent on foreign aid. So World Bank, European Commission, a lot of European NGOs, they retreated from the scene of the cooperatives and they left their cooperatives just there. But we found that those cooperatives still survived, although they didn't get that extra support anymore. What was important also at that time is that we discovered that cooperatives were creating a lot of employment. We will come back to that. But not only that, that also in terms of social protection, they were very important. When they were a credit cooperative, for example, they would still have certain insurance elements built in to help their members whenever one of the members would, for example, fall ill and had to go to a clinic. And in addition, we also found that the cooperatives were very important for people to solve the problems of poverty. We were developing income-generating activities. Cooperatives would also reach out to the poorer populations. So they did a lot of things to get the people collectively out of poverty. That's why we also called this strategy at that time co-op, cooperating out of poverty. One thing that was very important was that we found that the cooperative movement at that time was having the boots on the ground, really doing the job that was needed for the local population and together with the local population, but was rather invisible, was not very vocal. So you had a lot of people involved in non-governmental organizations, trade organizations, in churches and so on. They were very vocal and spoke out for the local population, where the cooperatives, they were focusing on the things that mattered on a daily basis. So they were there, but they were not there on the scene, like myself. So next, of course, is what is happening now? That this is 20 years ago, or almost 20 years ago. Now, as I said, we are facing this post-COVID crisis. We're also on the way to 2030. You know that by 2030, we have to realize quite an agenda for the Sustainable Development Goals. And we are not there yet. And we are not on track. So there is a need to accelerate our interventions to reach the Sustainable Development Goals. In addition, we also have to have something beyond 2030. Something will have to be there as a kind of collective agenda of the global community to do something about the sustainable issues. So they're also a big challenge, and we have to see how we will do it. And then comes, of course, also recently with Mr. Trump and other ones who say, we don't need any development cooperation for that matter anymore. So yet another challenge for all of us, how will we reach those sustainable development goals and beyond if we are facing all those different problems? Joseph.
Indeed. And maybe taking the cue from Patrick, why come up with this study on COPSTA? And the abbreviate, as Patrick said, is the Cooperative for Sustainable Transformation, not transition, yeah? Or transition. Either way, you can use those two words. So it's sustainable transition to sustainable economy or green economy, circular economy. It was to build up on the study that he has just described. The findings they have found in 2006 to 2008, but now to evaluate what exactly is happening in Africa at the moment. Are cooperatives still fit for purpose? Are cooperatives, what kind of development deals are they doing in Africa? What kind of challenges are they facing and bringing barriers that they cannot be able to overcome? And how can they be supported? What kind of opportunities are there? So this is what the study was looking at. And in what fields are cooperatives doing much better? So there are those that, for example, maybe in agricultural sector, they are doing better in different countries. There are others in financial sector. For example, in Kenya, the financial sector is doing so well, and cooperatives, majority of cooperatives are there, and we're going to discuss different cases at a later stage. But we needed to evaluate what kind of contribution are cooperatives really doing, what kind of challenges are there, opportunities that are there, and are they really doing it from the macro level or from the micro? Are they doing it from the grassroots, like evaluating at the local level in the rural villages? What kind of gaps are there? How can we be able to help these? Or are they looking at the macro level, at the national level, where maybe they can get financial grants from governments or others? So this is what now the study is about, and I think Patrick will go into detail more on different countries.
So as I said, last time in 2006-08, we covered about 11 countries. Now we are covering 20 different African countries. You can see them on the map. Interestingly, with those 20 countries, we cover a lot of the African territory. You know, there's 54 countries in Africa, so we have 20 of them. But as you can see on the map, we cover about half of the African territory. Also, in terms of population, we cover about half of the African population. And in total, there are 1.4 billion Africans, by the way, compared to 445 million Europeans, with 14 kilometers distance between us and Africa, but 1.4 billion Africans. And with this study, we cover about half of the African population. For each of the countries, we have set up a research strategy.
Yeah, indeed. We have about 20 researchers who are doing this work, evaluating from those 20 countries. So we have a researcher for each country who is giving us the data. But the committee is being led by, and thanks to the support of Patrick Develtere and Frederick Wanyama, who are also the ones who are doing the previous one. We also have E.G. Mohammed from Cairo University, Sizwe Mkonazi from Johannesburg, South Africa, Mevin Kabeje, my colleague from IC Africa, and also we have Git Chami from ILO. This is the team that is supporting in developing this program. Yeah.
So today we want to give you a sneak preview of what we have found. We're still collecting information, we're still analyzing information, and I can say you that we find a lot of sustainability initiatives, really sustainability from below. But importantly is that we see a growing and expanding movement. We see more cooperatives compared to what we saw 20 years ago. We think there are about 500 to 600,000 cooperatives in Africa. And when we say 500, 600,000, it means that we don't take into account those who are just registered, but who are dormant. So those are there and have some kind of activity, small or big. We also see a significant increase in terms of membership. We think that there are over 100 million African cooperative members. In some countries, more than in other ones, we see a significant increase. This is the case for Ethiopia, for Egypt, for Kenya, for South Africa. In some countries, it is less. But in most countries, there is indeed a significant increase in number of cooperatives and also in terms of membership. We think about 14% of the population in Africa is currently a member of one or more cooperatives. And this growth is faster than the economic growth. As I said, the 1.4 billion people in Africa, and you have to count that per generation normally, so per 25, 30 years, there is a doubling of the population in each of the countries that we are covering. But we have to be careful, of course, with those figures because people are a member at the same time of different cooperatives. Some cooperatives are very vibrant, other ones are struggling. So it's also a question of being very careful when we deal with this kind of information. But to give you two examples, we will delve a little bit more into the case of Kenya and then Senegal. Kenya.
Yeah. So if I give maybe the case of Kenya, because I'm also a Kenyan, so maybe I also understand a little bit about the Kenyan dynamic. But indeed, Kenya, we have one of the most vibrant cooperative movement in Africa, mainly because of various reasons. One is the support by the government. Kenya is also one of the few countries that has a ministry, a full ministry dedicated to cooperatives. And we have cooperatives in different, almost all sectors actually, from insurance, from banking, agriculture, name them, housing. So we have seen the growth because previously it used to be like the dominating sector was agriculture. But now the microfinance, the financing, the banking, one of the best performing bank also in Kenya is the Cooperative Bank of Kenya. So, and also the adoption of some of the fintechs like M-Pesa also helped people in the same, creating the saving culture, and now they went into the savings and credit cooperative. So it is easier to transact online, so you don't have to necessarily go to the bank. You can just do it at the comfort of your house. And you can be able to transact from different bank to another, from one platform to another without any paper trail or going to a specific place. So that is the reason as to why we have seen the adoption of the cooperative model in Kenya, and people have really adopted it. As you see, the figures themselves, we say the numbers don't lie. So the figures themselves, they are showing the kind of even contribution that cooperatives are creating to the GDP. Also, Kenya, we have one of, we also take pride in it, the Cooperative University of Kenya, meaning that even young people, other than just learning about cooperatives from, let's say, from maybe the job or if they save, but now through education. And I know there have been a bill that has been being proposed that if they can be able to integrate the cooperative education into the school curricula. So in a way, people can be able to learn from how they can get to understand what a cooperative is, how they can use the cooperative model, and how they can empower themselves. So this is something that we're also trying to see. Through these kind of examples, can they be modeled in other countries? And yeah, maybe you'll be able to give also another case from another sector and country, like Senegal.
But maybe first, Frederick, congratulate you. Maybe first I have to congratulate you because you are a member of one of the exemplary cooperative movements in the world. Kenya has the biggest coverage of cooperation in the world. So happy to have you here and very proud to have you here. So as you understand by now, the scale of the movement is much bigger. The expanding movement is more impressive than ever before. But that is also the case in terms of scope, not only in terms of scale. In terms of scope, remember that previously we had the savings and credit cooperatives that were so important, and as well as the agriculture cooperatives. But now we see in many cases, and this is the one I want to elaborate, that in many countries you also see that the cooperative movement is branching out to other sectors. Let me give you indeed that example. We have the partner of BRS in Senegal, which is the Union des institutions mutualistes communautaires d'épargne de crédit, which is the umbrella body or the union of mutual institutions for credit and savings. As I said, it's a social economy model I was talking about previously. They have about 340,000 members. Mr. Frederick was talking about his 400,000 members with Sarah. Here they have 340,000. They are almost at your level, Frederick. So be aware, be careful. So they're very well organized, and they have 4 what they call caisses, but they also have local offices, about 20 local offices, and they have more than 50 contact points. They're very close to the local population. But interestingly, they do not want to work in splendid isolation as a kind of a cooperative bank. They really want to branch out and reach out to the local population. And under the leadership of Mr. Usman, which is their visionary president, they have been connecting with a lot of producers' organizations, with agriculture cooperatives and so on. And so they make a kind of a deal to see how together they can expand. The cooperative is there, the savings and credit cooperative is there for all the savings and credit needs of the population, including also the needs of the other agriculture cooperatives and the other cooperatives in the area. But at the same time, they are a kind of a platform also for all the different cooperatives to meet and to discuss the different problems that they have and to try to find collective solutions for those problems. For example, in recent times, the IMSEC, the union, has set up a branch, a special department or a service to help the farming community, the farmers and their producers' organizations and their agriculture cooperatives to go indeed in that direction of sustainable development. What kind of alternatives can we find for using pesticides, for example? How will we do water management? How will we do away with the waste that we produce? Those are different challenges that people have in their communities, also within their producers' organizations and in their agriculture cooperatives. So the union says, let's deal with that together. Now, as I said, it's about scope and it's about scale. It's about an expanding movement. And we see that the cooperative movement is not limiting itself anymore to savings and credit and to agriculture, but is also branching out to other areas. A very promising one is the health sector. In many countries, this is done through mutual societies, mutuelles de santé. In many countries also, and increasingly, this is also done through cooperatives. Uganda is a very good case where you have over 30 health cooperatives which organize health services, but at the same time give people the possibility to have a kind of an insurance so that whenever they are sick and they have to go and consult somebody in a clinic, they can be reimbursed for any costs that they have incurred. It's extremely successful, particularly among the female population, because a lot of the care functions, of course, in the families in Africa and also in our cultures is, of course, something that is on the shoulders of the woman. Those are the healthcare cooperatives we see emerging all over the place. The same goes for everything that relates to ecotourism, to a blue economy. A good case, of course, is the small island of Cape Verde, or the islands of Cape Verde. But we also see it in many other places where you see taxi drivers, for example, joining into cooperatives, where you see people organizing lodges, small hotels. So many different activities that are related to ecological tourism.
Indeed. And also, some of the findings that we have seen so far in different sectors, as Patrick was saying, like field like mining is one of the areas that were dominated by informal economy. So the people are not well organized other than those multinationals. But now the miners are coming together. So a little bit cooperatives now are contributing on transition from informal to formal economy. And we have some examples not only from DR Congo, but even from other countries. As I mentioned on the case for Kenya, the uptake of the ICT and digitalization, where you find now people are going online and they are creating platform cooperatives where they are able now to set up the online market. You can be able to order, a producer can be able to put their products online and people are able to buy, so they don't even go to a physical shop. Everything is just transacted online. And the payment is done easily with M-Pesa. So I believe that maybe some of you might have heard about the M-Pesa. The transaction, it's an easy setup, but maybe we'll talk about it when we'll be talking about innovation. For the housing in Senegal, maybe it's a case that you're quite familiar with, Patrick, because Patrick has also done some case studies also and research in Senegal. But not only in Senegal, but if you go to countries like Egypt, housing sector, well, we are living in the northern hemisphere. We know the housing crisis. It is not also isolated case on the northern hemisphere, even the southern one. We find in big cities, you go to Kenya, to Nairobi, finding a house is not always that easy. But now, the cooperatives have found that it's a niche that they can be able to bridge that gap, and we have a national housing cooperative in different countries, and they are supporting with this. In manufacturing, I think maybe Patrick, you can.
Yes, indeed. There's so many different other areas that we can mention where you see that people are looking for sustainability from below. And one of the examples is the one that you see on the picture. And this is what is called an argan cooperative. Argan is a special nut through which people can extract oil. And it's very popular in Morocco. People are very proud about it, the argan in Morocco. So this is a cooperative of over 50 women who have set up a factory next to the place that you see here, where they extract that oil from argan and sell it on the local market, but also increasingly on the international market, because it's very popular. Similarly, you see, again, in Egypt, for example, female organizations working in carpentry sector, working in handicraft sector, extracting medicinal things from plants and from trees and so on. So many different branches. The same goes for the waste management, Joseph.
We have seen also still in the transition from informal to formal, the waste pickers in South Africa, they are contributing. Nowadays, some cities like Johannesburg, they are contracting these cooperatives to provide services on waste picking and recycling services. We have more than 500 youth cooperatives in Rwanda, and they are in different sectors, some of them in the transport sector. We have actually another domain, I would say, even the transport cooperatives. Rwanda has one of the best examples that is trying to be modeled in other countries. And we have student cooperatives, not only in Rwanda, but they are being done also in other countries. I see also the Aflatun International. They are also trying to see how they can be able to bring financial literacy education to schools through cooperatives. And they have started doing those kind of programs in different countries. And right now they are based in Nairobi. In terms of the major trends, I just wanted to highlight 2 or 3, and then I give to Patrick. Better enabling framework. This photo, the green one that you see there, it's a study that was conducted by our organization, the International Cooperative Alliance, because we have a framework partnership agreement with the EU, and we had gotten the support between 2016 and 2021. And also, right now, we have another framework partnership agreement, and I see my colleague here, Annalisa. And we have been doing this legal framework analysis. And what we found in our first phase, when we were doing this analysis and for African cases, since 2012, the first International Year of Cooperatives, majority of countries came to the realization of acknowledging the importance of cooperatives, and they started revising their outdated laws and creating a little bit of enabling environment for cooperatives. And this is something that we also want to do even now with this new framework partnership agreement. We want to evaluate, and also through COPSTA, we want to evaluate, are laws getting better? How can we ensure that we also create awareness about this? So you find also in now with this kind of realization and kind of sensitization that cooperatives are really indeed contributing to sustainability, contributing to the economy. Some countries that did not recognize cooperatives have also started recognizing. That is why we say that cooperative is a preferred legal statute. From aid dependent, maybe.
Yes, as I mentioned previously, cooperatives were very much dependent on their own governments, got a lot of subsidies from their own governments, but they're also very dependent on foreign support by international agencies like the World Bank, European Commission, and different NGOs, also from different cooperatives from North America or from Europe. We see that increasingly the cooperative movement is standing on its own feet. And you could say that we are witnessing a more and more self-propelled movement that is relying on the mobilization of the resources of the local population, as the case of Kenya and Senegal has well illustrated, mobilization of the resources of the local population to develop their own projects and to achieve their own agenda. This can also only happen, we think, because we see a new generation of members, of people in the boards of directors and in the leadership of the cooperative movement. It's a much younger generation. People who have got education, who went to school, went to university, did their masters, maybe also a PhD outside of their country, and they come back and they start to lead their cooperative. So which is very important. The other thing is also we see a feminization of the cooperative movement, which brings in, of course, another dimension again, because women in Africa, as all over the place, they feel also responsible for what is happening, not only to themselves, but also to what is happening to their kids and the family and to their communities. So they also bring in a new spirit of dynamism, entrepreneurship, and so on in the cooperatives, which is very, very, very important. So we see a more autonomous, more independent cooperative movement arising all over the place. Interestingly, as I also try to explain with the case of Senegal and Joseph with the case of Kenya, we see that those cooperatives are cooperating among themselves or liaising with each other and try to see how they can be a kind of a win-win operation. If we work together as cooperatives, we can win both sides. And we can win as also in terms of the effects and the impact that we have in society in general. Also linking up with other partners of the social economy, linking up with mutuals, with foundations, with community-based organizations. That also seems to be very high on the agenda also in many of the cooperatives that we have seen so far. As I said, cooperatives were not very vocal at the time when we looked at them first in 2005, 2008. Now we see a movement that is a little bit more vocal, but still they don't take a prime place on the political and the social scene. In public opinion, they don't take a prime scene, but they do take a prime position whenever it comes to innovation. Joseph.
Yeah. As you see this photo, we put it there because this is an online platform that is done in Ghana to show also there are different countries, and it's called Asusu Cooperative Management Software. So where cooperatives, if they want to manage themselves, organize themselves, they can get all the services they want online. And this kind of fintech, as I mentioned, M-Pesa or any other platform, Cooperative Bank of Kenya has also introduced another platform. They call it My Coop Bank Soko. Soko means market. Where now producer cooperatives, they don't necessarily need even to go to maybe from the rural area to another area. They can just post it on that platform, and then buyers will just come to get them. And they are doing it as a cooperative, not just an individual. So these are kind of innovations that we have seen. And in terms of cooperation among cooperatives, something that we have seen cooperatives can do is to leverage on the Africa Free Trade Area. This framework was adopted a few years ago. Its implementation is still, let's say, it's in the thought phase because it has not been fully implemented. But if cooperatives are able to cooperate amongst themselves, where you are able to sell your products from Kenya to Ghana, from South Africa to Morocco, then they will be able to even leverage the market, the continent market space that is given to multinationals or other organizations. But if cooperatives can do, because right now they focus too much on how can we export our produces, maybe to East Asia, to Europe, to America, but they can also take advantage of the African market. So these are some of the key trends that we have been evaluating and still see how they can be more vocal and more present.
Maybe finally, what is then this contribution to sustainability? And what is the contribution in terms of accelerating the process of sustainability? I already mentioned the fact that Africa is suffering most from what we call the sustainability challenge. In terms of climate change, in terms of the rise of the temperature, but also in terms of drought, in terms of pollution. You know, there's about 1 million people in Africa dying every year from air pollution, which is more than HIV, malaria, and TB combined, more than 1 million people. So Africa is really suffering from this kind of flaws. I think many of us will remember that a couple of years ago, you had those billions the swarms of you had those swarms of locusts. You had the swarms of locusts, thank you so much, all over the place in East Africa, in Kenya, Tanzania, in Somalia. This was due to climate change. So then the question remains, of course, I mean, if that continent is so hard hit, what can people do about it, and what can cooperatives do about it?
What we have seen, for example, for them to produce this nice coffee and find the market for it, they have to tick too many boxes. And one of them is about deforestation. Are they contributing to deforestation, or are they contributing to reforestation? And you cannot access the European market if you are contributing to deforestation. And so in a way to combat this, or what cooperatives are doing nowadays, especially the coffee farmers, they are planting trees to cover their bushes, their coffee bushes, and also contributing to reforestation. In terms of, and we have seen also majority of them getting into the activities of planting trees, not necessarily because they just want to cover their crops or anything, but they are contributing to combating the desertification, because as Patrick said, Africa is really affected by the climate change. There are so many areas where they used to be quite arid or semi-arid, totally desert right now, or yeah. So in terms of cooperatives, they are also contributing to planting of the trees. Water and waste management, I will not go through the whole list. We just wanted to share some of the key items or areas that cooperatives are still contributing. But I wanted to also mention about the climate smart farming, the eco-agricultural production, where now they have these experts who are coming to advise cooperatives, because majority of the farmers, they are small-scale farmers, and they are in the villages, in the rural areas. They may not have the leverage or the privilege to get information on what is happening on, or what kind of crops they can be able to plant that will be resistant to drought, or so they are getting the agricultural officers who are experienced on these areas, and they are going to educate the farmers, which is also part of the cooperative principle 5 on education, information, and training. So these are some of the key findings that we have found that cooperatives are doing, and that is why now they fit for purpose.
Yes, in the title of our presentation, it was said, "Are cooperatives fit for purpose, question mark." So what we have seen so far, and as I said, this is still a preview of the things that we are discovering, we see that the narrative is there. Inevitably, because cooperatives are grassroots organizations, they talk with their members and the members talk with each other. And this is the talk of the day. How will we survive the next season? Farmers do not know when the rain will be there. Farmers do not know when they can harvest their crops. So it is the talk of the day. So you see that indeed, within the cooperative movement, the talk of the day is all about sustainability. It was about social sustainability 20 years ago, how to create employment, how to have an income, how to have social protection. Now you see that in addition to that, it's also the talk is about sustainability. But as the examples that we have given show, they also walk the talk. They start to do things. And indeed, they also discover that they do a lot of harm themselves. A lot of cooperatives are still using pesticides. A lot of cooperatives are using vehicles that pollute the air. So they discover also that they will have to change. So but bit by bit, you see that they engage in a practice that is promising in terms of sustainability.
Mm-hmm. So they are engaging in practice. As Patrick has said, they are walking the talk. But now the key question is, are they being listened to? Whenever they go, maybe they present themselves to the government. Are they being included in these talks? For example, the carbon credits. Are they able to get even those fundings or grants? Are they even aware that these exist and how they can take advantage of? So that is why we are saying majority of them, they are ignored. But maybe with this study that we are coming up on COPSTA, probably it will enlighten the policymakers to understand what role that cooperatives are making and how they can be involved in these discussions.
So the next steps that we foresee with COPSTAR is to have, of course, this publication ready within this year of the International Year of Cooperation. So by summertime, by September the latest, the book should be there. And then we want to launch into a big debate in every single country that we are covering. So we want to have a national debate on the role of the cooperatives in tackling the sustainability challenges. We also want to have an international debate, as Joseph has insisted on. The cooperatives are not listened at when it comes to the big mechanisms, the sustainability from below, so to speak, that is really out there thanks to the cooperatives, is not seen and not taken into account by those who are concerned with the sustainability from the top. We will have a big meeting in Belém by the end of the year in Brazil to discuss climate change and everything that has to be done. And a lot has to be done by our governments and by the international community, and carbon credit systems and so on are extremely important. But we also want that they take into account the many initiatives that are taken by the people who have the boots on the ground, or the cooperative movement. So it is a research that currently already is animating debates in certain circles in the different countries, but we want indeed also to move to action in the next phase. And you're very welcome to join. We already have a couple of volunteers who have joined us. For example, Piet Hendricks from BRS was the one who helped us with the fantastic logo that we have with CoopStar. But you're very welcome as an individual, as an association, also as a responsible person, maybe for one or the other institution, also to join forces, and let's move to action because it is urgently needed. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Patrick and Joseph. I received from many of you and also people from the live stream in advance some questions. Most of them are already ticked, so I have most are answered. But I have some left, but I would like to give the floor, taking into account that it's already 1 o'clock. I would like to give the floor to you for 2 questions. If somebody wants to share a question, there is the microphone. Yeah.
Hi, thank you for the really interesting presentation. I was really struck by the numbers that you shared on Kenya, where I think that half of all cooperative organizations were SACCOs or Chamas, Roscas, and there was about 3/4 of cooperative members. And so I wanted to know, did you find a similar distribution across the other countries that you studied?
Okay, thank you for that question. Maybe do we take maybe 2 or 3 if they are, and then we answer all together?
So thank you for the presentation. It was very insightful. I have one question regarding the fact that during the presentation, we really understood that the cooperative has to work on their own fund. They really have to work by themselves. And now we put the sustainability ambition, some part of it, on them, while the government, the law, really has to impact it, because how will it be sustainable for them to take this role while the law or the government hasn't changed?
You take the first question.
Yeah, I'll take the first one.
Go ahead.
Okay. There's another one.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. My question is about what is called in French économie sociale et solidaire. What is the link between cooperatives and économie sociale et solidaire? Thank you.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So then I can answer the first question. Yeah, indeed, in Kenya, because of let's say the cooperatives are really creating the economic empowerment for people or to people. The SACCOs or the cooperative bank has really been one of the key adopted model, and people are adopting the SACCO sector. But is it the same in other countries? Is it the same in other African countries? I don't think there are so many countries that don't have SACCOs at the moment. If you go to Ethiopia, also one of the rising sector is the financial sector. We have some big SACCOs that are coming up, like Awat SACCO. But in terms of the numbers, we have to. I have to review again because I only took an example of Kenya and how it had the exact numbers that I can be able to explain. But yes, in terms of uptake in other countries, there are so many other countries that are adopting this model of SACCOs. And one, maybe something I can mention also why the people are going for the SACCOs is because, well, they feel they are members. It's not like a commercial bank. And they also get dividends at the end of the year. Plus, they are able to access loans easily than in a commercial bank. And also the rate that they usually get is a friendly rate, almost sometimes half of what the commercial banks are offering. So that is the reason as to why also majority of people find SACCOs convenient for them. And that is also the reason as to why you see the number for example, for Kenya, there are so many people who are joining the SACCOs.
Do not underestimate the demographics. As I said, Africa is growing very, very fastly in terms of population. The young population is the population that has aspiration. So people want to do something with their life, also in Africa. And so people are looking for opportunities. So if you want to do something, you want to engage in business, or you want to build a house, or whatever you want to do, I mean, you need money. So this is why people are attracted to this offer that is there by the savings and credit cooperatives, because the banking, the traditional banking sector is not out there, or is not sufficiently out there. So this is one of the reasons why the savings and credit cooperatives, indeed, in most African countries, they are very prominent, and they have become more prominent than the agriculture cooperatives. But as I said, interestingly, they also branch out and they reach out now to different other domains in the economy. Your question, madam, is very valuable. I really appreciate the question. Huh? So what our thesis is that indeed the cooperative movement is there with the boots on the ground, taking up the concrete challenges of people also in terms of sustainability. But you're right. You're right. I mean, those communities are not responsible for what is going wrong in terms of sustainability and the climate change and the temperature change and the droughts and whatever is happening around them. So they do their part. But more has to be done indeed by the regulatory powers in the country, like the governments, but also by the international community. So it has to be something that everybody takes responsibility for. Huh? But what we say is, and our call is to look at least at those people who take it up and do something about it. And so we want to make them visible, and we want to make them heard by those powers that also have to contribute. Huh? So I thank you very much for that question. Then there was the question about the social and solidarity economy, which is a notion that is not very well known in this country, by the way. But it refers indeed to what I have mentioned as the different models of cooperatives that you have in the world. You have the unified model, you have the social movement model like we now hear, and then you have the more Latin-inspired, also very popular in Latin America, of the social and the solidarity economy. Which says that whatever instrument that you use, is it a cooperative or a foundation or an association or any other kind of way to organize yourself, the important thing is that you try to tackle some of the problems and the issues that people are concerned with. Huh? And you do it in a collective way. You do it in an interconnected way. You're not separately there as a cooperative movement or as a mutual movement or an associative movement or NGOs. You try to interconnect and deal with the things collectively. Any other questions, Kurt?
Yeah, actually I have to look to the time. So therefore I think for the formal exchange here that we will close. You know that BRS is closely linked, it was at the beginning, structural link to KBC and SERA. The most important contribution of KBC for our organization is the involvement of all these colleagues who do in a semi-voluntary way, half during work, half during free time, the exchange with our colleagues in the South. Another contribution of KBC is when we have a lunch, there is a free lunch. And this is something that they offer after this session. I know there are some very specific questions, like questions about how is the German cooperative sector organized. Colleagues from Germany are here. These questions, I haven't raised them here. And I propose that we have the next questions during the informal exchange. You stay around and even a little bit after 2 o'clock. So if you have specific questions that you feel they are not answered here in this session, please join us for the lunch. And I thank all of you very much for joining here live and also the people in the live stream. Thank you very much.